When you look at the most popular movies about boxing, there's one that sticks out, and that's Rocky. The original and its 7 sequels have lasted over 40 years. But when it comes to storytelling rules, Rocky breaks a big one, and that rule is about the length of acts, especially Act 1. And even though this rule breaking could have ruined the movie, instead it's one of the reasons Rocky is so memorable. Because where the rules say movies should look like this, Rocky looks like this, with its first act lasting almost half the movie. So let's talk about how they broke the rules and why. This is Unstructured by Plotwell. To understand what makes Rocky so unique, we need to quickly cover structure and acts. Most story structuralists agree that stories, and especially movies, tend to follow 3-act structure, and those acts tend to follow a quarter-half-quarter split, meaning Act 1 takes up 25% of the total story length, Act 2 50%, and Act 3 25%. And there's a reason behind this. Act 1 contains the catalyst, also known as the inciting incident, where some opportunity is presented to the protag, short for protagonist. In other words, this is what the story is about. For example, in Saving Private Ryan, the catalyst is when protag Captain Miller is asked to, big surprise, save Private Ryan. The other reason Act 1 should be short is because the break between Act 1 and Act 2 marks when the protag starts their journey. Basically, it's when the story really begins. So when a story follows quarter-half-quarter splits, it means the first 25% sets up the story, and the other 75% is the exciting stuff. For example, in The Matrix, the end of Act 1 is when protag Neo wakes up in his vat of goo, which is right at the 25% point, and then we get to spend the majority of the story watching the cool stuff. Most movies put the catalyst around 12%, and the end of Act 1 around 25%, but Rocky doesn't. Rocky's catalyst, when he's asked to fight Apollo Creed, doesn't start until minute 53, and the end of Act 1, when he agrees to the fight, isn't until minute 57, this in a movie that runs just shy of 2 hours. That's almost half the story in Act 1. So why does Rocky wait so long to get to what the story is about? Before we get to the why, let's actually look at what happens in Rocky. Its first half is about protag Rocky's developing relationship with Adrian. Its second half is about Rocky's fight with heavyweight champion Apollo Creed. And to understand what the movie is doing with its structure and why it waits so long to get to what the story is about, it'll help to label these as the A story and B story. In writing terms, the A story is the main plot, or the story's premise. In this case, it's an underdog fighting a boxing legend. Think of the A story as how you would pitch the movie to a friend. For example, The Hunger Games is about a bunch of teenagers fighting to the death. The A story is protag Katniss Everdeen's participation in the Hunger Games. But the B story is a kind of subplot that covers the lesson or moral or character arc of the story. In The Hunger Games, this would be Katniss's developing relationship with Peeta. Yes, the B story often includes the love interest. So in Rocky, the A story would be Rocky fighting Apollo Creed, and the B story would be his relationship with Adrian. But as you can see, the two are separated. And this is the real reason the movie is so atypical, and the reason the first act is so long. Normally, the A story and B story are developed simultaneously. We cut back and forth between the action of the A story and the emotion of the B story. But to put the whole B story up front is a big risk. To understand why, let's look at the Hunger Games again. Katniss and Peeta are chosen for the games very early in the story. They're shipped off to the capital, and the relationship develops there and in the arena. In other words, the A story and B story develop simultaneously. But if the Hunger Games followed the structure of Rocky, it would look like this. We spend a full hour in District 12 getting to know Katniss and Peeta, then not until halfway through the movie they're chosen for the games, and the rest of the movie is spent in the capital and the arena. The risk, obviously, is that the audience will close the book or stop the movie before they get to the good stuff. And that's the risk Rocky took, making the audience wait almost an hour before Rocky is asked to fight Apollo Creed. If it was released today in the age of streaming when you can stop a movie instantly, the movie would probably fail. However, by taking this risk, Rocky became more powerful and enduring. Arguably, it's also the reason the movie spawned 7 sequels so far. And the secret is right there in the movie's title. Rocky. He's the reason we stick around, and the reason we keep coming back. Because what Rocky's first half does, more than anything, is create a complex and fascinating character, one that we care about, and it does this mainly through juxtaposition. Rocky shouldn't be likable. He's a low-level boxer, a bum, and side gigs as a debt collector for a mobster. So how does the movie get us on Rocky's side? It does it by showing us Rocky's true self, the side that waves at puppies through windows, that takes care of pet turtles, that won't break a man's thumb even though his boss told him to, and that convinces a Zamboni driver to let him and Adrian skate after hours even though he can't skate. And this first hour slowly builds a character we shouldn't like, but we do, and proof that it worked is that we're still talking about Rocky 40 years later, and the sequels and spin-offs are still coming. So even though it might not succeed with audiences today, part of the reason Rocky endures the test of time is because of the big risk it took with its story structure. Front-loading the B story is risky, but when done right, it can create deeper empathy with a potentially unlikable character. Well, that and all these eggs Rocky eats.
Kramer are up, and it's a good morning. Boy, I tell you, I need something.